everybody, my name is Deb Holland and I run an online ministry at debhollandlcsw.com, and I'm also on Facebook, and I'd love for you to join me. I have daily encouragement and weekly blogs and video blogs. Today we're going to be talking about creating defensible space, which is a critical skill for life. It also happens to be chapter 3 in the first book I wrote called Make Your Destiny a Reality. Now normally I don't read from anything because that drives me crazy when speakers do that, but this chapter, this message is so important that I don't want to miss a word, so I am going to read from the book tonight. You can consider this your bedtime story. So, Defensible Space, Chapter 3. Our next task is to create defensible space around our destiny. Not everyone will be in favor of our new, healthier life, and we need to protect our fledgling efforts because they are still vulnerable at this stage. As our next analogy illustrates, we can't leave our destiny exposed and at risk. We need a clear zone around it, so there is room for any fires that may come to sweep around rather than tear through. The following is a student sermon I delivered at Chicago Theological Seminary. It explains what defensible space is and why it is critically important to mitigating risk. I was richly blessed to live in western Montana for most of my life. It is a land of stunning beauty and awesome people. Back home, forest fires are sometimes a fact of life. There are lookout towers spread throughout the western part of the state, which is heavily forested with trees and homes. Folks live in these towers high above the trees where they can see a 360-degree view for miles in every direction. Lightning strikes are a common cause of wildland fires. Every time a storm passes through, the lookouts watch for the tiniest wisp of smoke and call it in. If the fire is located in easy enough terrain, ground crews and trucks respond to contain the fire as quickly as possible. If the fire is in steep or difficult terrain, or is far enough away from the roads, smoke jumpers and slurry bombers are dispatched to fight the fire. There is a smoke jumpers base in Missoula, where I'm from, and these hardy souls actually jump out of airplanes near the fire to start fighting it before it gets out of control. Slurry bombers are retrofitted aircraft that hold a huge belly full of pink foam that puts out the fire. Their work is dangerous, amazing, and life-saving. During the worst fire season in Missoula I can ever remember, and they're having a similar season this year, the fires raced to the western edge of town. Blue Mountain, an area where the dogs and I had taken many wonderful hikes together, was engulfed in smoke and flames. The scene all over town was surreal. I worked at Ace Hardware then and spent my days helping firefighters load up on supplies. The smoke was so bad that I couldn't see across the parking lot at work, and it wasn't long before the ash began falling from the sky like snow. That night when I headed home, I could see the eerie glow from the fire just a few miles away. I knew that not far from where I was, those firefighters that I had helped all day long were bedded down in tent cities on the edge of town, trying to grab a few hours of sleep in shifts as fire conditions allowed. When I got home, not just the smell but the smoke itself was in the house, and I couldn't get it out. The normally bustling, easygoing Missoula grew very quiet and uncharacteristically nervous. My dogs were nervous, and when fire broke out on the eastern edge of town, very close to the University of Montana where I attended school, I was nervous too. I watched as the slurry bombers accomplished their extraordinary feats of physics and dove straight down towards the ground to lay down a line of pink foam ahead of the flames. Again and again they would swoop over the mountain, dive so close it took your breath away, drop the foam, and pull up sharply to return to the airbase nearby. When the flames reached the foam and stopped cold, my friends and I stood there, amazed. These are the sorts of things one sees during fire season in western Montana. And these are the sorts of things we see in our lives. Times when the western edge of our lives is burning, and before we can regain our bearings, the eastern edge erupts. Times when our days are focused on finding enough supplies to survive. Times when our lives are so filled with chaos we can't see our way clear from point A to point B. Times when circumstances give off an eerie glow. When we sleep in shifts as conditions allow. When not just the smell but the smoke itself pervades our homes and maybe even our hearts. Times when happiness turns to anxiety and it feels like it will last forever. In Montana, forest fires are viewed with a wary understanding. Everybody knows that forest fires are periodically necessary to clear out the overgrowth, to thin the trees, to allow sunlight and rain and nutrients to reach the ground again. And there are some seeds that are not even released until the intense heat of a forest fire frees them from their shell. If fires never happen, disease can take over the trees. If fires never happen, the trees and overgrowth can become so dense that it sets the stage for a catastrophic fire years later. It is not a question of if, but when. Catastrophic fires cause damage far beyond what's normal. They do not simply clear out the overgrowth, they torch everything in their path. They cause destruction that takes years to heal. Everybody knows this. Every fire season is approached with a cautious eye. You know the fires are necessary, but you hope they don't happen to you. You hope one doesn't hit too close to town, not just because of the life-threatening risk they pose to people, to animals and property, but because they are stinky, messy affairs. They fill the air with thick, acrid smoke. The ash swirls everywhere in this fine mist that's hard to clean up. Life becomes tense with a helpless feeling of watching the encroaching flames and not knowing which direction the wind will shift next. Everybody back home in Montana has a story like this about the fires. About the years when the rivers had to be shut down to all recreation because it was dangerous to be on them. Years when little kids and the elderly were advised to stay inside. Years when everyone was advised to stay inside. And in some years, many years in fact, if the fire was bad enough, the only thing that put it out was the snow. Our lives are like these forest fires. I do not believe that God deliberately throws down the lightning bolts into our lives, but I do believe that He is with us when they strike. With God by our side, we can use these times to clear out the overgrowth and prevent a catastrophic fire later on. And there are seeds within us, that are not released until the scorching heat of life brings them forth. Our lives these days are choked with overgrowth. Sometimes our lives become so dense with busyness and burdens that the sunlight and the rain and the nutrients cannot reach the ground. Fire presents us with an opportunity to clear all that junk out and for the new seeds within us to flourish. In Montana, the one lesson the fires teach everyone is the critical importance of defensible space. This is a term used to describe creating a zone around a home in which fire cannot easily spread. It means clearing out the trees and the brush and the overgrowth around a home so that if fire breaks out nearby, your home will be safe from crowning trees that burst into flames and from the embers that can touch off spot fires. It means allowing yourself and the fire crews room to work around your home to save it if it's in the direct path of the fire. Our lives are just like this. In such troubled times, it is wise to create defensible space around our homes, our families, and our very souls. As the forest fires of life rage around us daily, you don't want tall and vulnerable trees standing next to your front door. You don't want a bunch of brush in your backyard where your kids and dogs play. You want room in which falling embers won't touch off a spot fire. Most importantly, you want room for God to work around you and within you. Whether lightning in your life has already struck or you are viewing the overgrowth with concern, God is with you. He offers you the most amazing gift possible every day you wake up, the chance to begin anew. Regardless of whether you are standing among the charred and smoldering ruins of a life you once knew, or sitting on your front porch considering exactly which trees need to come down, God is with you. Let Him help you create that defensible space. Whether it is setting better boundaries, accepting help from others, or giving up whatever is preventing you from living a full and happy life. Let Him help you push up those first defiant blades of grass the spring after a fire has hit. The new growth that announces to the world, you do not have me beat. I am coming back. Let Him nourish the new seeds the fire has liberated. Let Him man your lookout tower, so that when lightning strikes again, He sees the very first signs of smoke and sends His angels, His smoke jumpers, to see you safely through. While the details will be unique to each of us, defensible space is something we all need in our lives. Today's modern lifestyle can be filled with clutter and stress. We are frequently bombarded with noise, distraction, and issues far, far beyond our control. It can be very easy to grow weary, to lose sight of our priorities, and to allow our lives to become one long procession of checklists and obligations. To wait watchfully and tensely while we try to gauge which direction the wind will shift next. At that point, the stage is set for a catastrophic fire in our future. Defensible space saves us. It clears away the unnecessary old so that we can build something new and trust it will last for the long haul. It is created by defining the zone, clearing out the overgrowth, and thinning the trees, which allows the sunlight and the rain to reach the ground again. It is maintained by making sure we release the seeds that the scorching heat of life have freed from their shell. How do we do this? Let's look at each step in turn. The first step is to define the zone. We can't protect something if we don't know what it is. This means the first step to creating defensible space is figuring out what the zone of safety needs to be. Of course, there are no guarantees, nothing bad will happen despite your best efforts, but what we're trying to accomplish is minimizing risk. If you had a house in the woods, you'd use the proper calculations to determine how many feet away from your house the trees and the brush need to be without posing undue danger. It's equally important to make the necessary calculations with our lives. First of all, determine what kind of zone you need around your most valuables, your career, your personal well-being, and your family, so that you can keep those aspects of your life healthy. Only you can decide what's needed. Second, think about the primary investments you'll need to make: time, money, logistics, and energy. Those are 4 things that most adults today find in very short supply. Think about how can you be creative and disciplined in defining the zone and what is truly necessary to make your life what you want it to be. There's the ideal, the bare minimum, and lots of options in between. You're the expert on your own life and your own destiny, what God has called you to do, the purpose and the reason that you are here, and how to align those so all your priorities stay reasonably in balance. Those decisions lie entirely in your hands. Once you've defined the zone, it's time to haul out the pruners or maybe even the chainsaw. Whatever it takes to clear out the internal and external clutter that distracts us, crowds our space, and creates unnecessary risk in our lives. Fire that begins in overgrowth is slow-moving and not very hot. While brush in and of itself is not likely to start a catastrophic fire right away, it certainly adds powerful fuel to nearby trees if trouble breaks out later on. Tall trees represent the most dangerous threat to defensible space. Fire can race across the terrain with lethal speed by leaping from treetop to treetop. Trees burst into flames with a heat so fierce it incinerates the tree almost instantly. The force and the speed of the flames can throw embers great distances and touch off spot fires on the ground. These fires gain power, create their own wind, and can become a life-threatening inferno, destroying everything in their path. In modern life, TV time, the internet, social media, jangling cell phones, hobbies, sports, and a diversity of other activities can overgrow our time and crowd out the opportunity to work on our lives. They can make easy marks for clearing out, or at least thinning. Make your choices mindfully, however, because you don't want to strip away all of the unique to you activities that make your life meaningful, or you'll just end up resentful and quit on your dreams anyway. You need to be happy enough in real time to maintain your stamina and your sanity. Hang on to those activities that mean the most to you, and make your choices so you can live in balance, not in deprivation. The three things that can slip away from us the fastest as adults are rest, play, and peace. If we are to facilitate healthy terrain within our defensible space, it is essential to preserve those things that spiritually sustain us and will give us the strength for pursuing the life that we most want. It is the only thing that will keep the overgrowth from creeping back. You'll want to clear away the trees and brush that present the obvious threats, but there's no need to pluck up every blade of grass from the lawn. Releasing the seeds past fires have freed from their shell can propel you far beyond what would otherwise have been possible. We may have suffered at the hands of other people. We may have caused our own suffering with our own bad choices. Or we may have even had random painful events that were no one's fault make a real mess in our lives. God is with us while we try to clean up this damage, and He is the only one who can turn what happened to us into some kind of good. He is the one that can turn our pain into purpose for other people, while still acknowledging the pain it caused you. Think about whether or not there is anything from the past at all that you can use now for your own benefit or for the benefit of others. This does not mean we suddenly decide what happened to us was okay. The point is, whatever happened, happened. And regardless of whose fault it was, it's up to us to find a way under, over, through, or around so we can move on, so we can move forward with our lives. If we were the victim, we can heal by allowing God to transform the harm that was done to us into something good. Usually, that means we help other people heal as well. It only takes one person to shine a ray of light, a ray of hope into the darkness for others to believe in what is possible. Conversely, if we are the ones who caused the harm, we can make amends to the best of our ability. We can make healthy choices now, ask for forgiveness, and accept God's mercy and grace, and not repeat our mistakes. Living in the past is destructive to the here and now. We need to deal with it and then let it go. What we learned from the mistakes we made can provide us with the motivation and the wisdom, the hard-won wisdom, to make better decisions for the rest of our lives. Once we have a clear zone, maintaining breathing room is essential. Allowing God to man our lookout tower provides us with the best possible protection. We don't have to do it in our own strength. We can rest secure and focused when we know God is watching over us and guiding us away from trouble. This happens when we listen. This happens when we make decisions that bring us peace and we work from peace to peace. There are many ways that God speaks to us: our gut instinct, the little voice inside our head, our intuitive feelings of being led in one direction or another, or perhaps a remark that someone makes that resonates with what we're going through, and we know that's God talking to us through them. When we live in a mindful space of heeding God's will and His wisdom, we are far more likely to recognize overgrowth or tall trees for what they are and take steps to stop them from making us vulnerable. Think about how you hear the voice of God in your own life and what messages have been sent to you so far about His purpose for you, for your life. Learn to listen more attentively, and the ideas that seem so elusive now will suddenly be given to you. And the problems you were so convinced couldn't be solved disappear at a time when you least expect them to. Creating defensible space, without question, takes a great deal of hard work initially, but the zone of protection you set up can last for years to come. This is a stage of great vulnerability for you and your life, when you realize what it's really going to take to make that happen. Most of us don't realize that the pursuit of a tangible dream means we need to do some internal clearing of intangible debris. You may need to clear in stages or layers or circles or whatever metaphor fits for you. It may take several rounds of clearing the brush and the trees before you stand back and decide the zone is secure. Remember, the short-term sacrifices can be amazingly worth it later on, providing you with a level of security, freedom, and happiness you didn't even think was possible. God's like that. He wants to bless you abundantly.